I think it's fair to say we couldn't be completely certain about Darko Rajakovic's job security ahead of next season, but we definitely are now. And the contract has just been made even longer for the Raptors head coach. But was this the right decision by the organization? We'll cover the answer to that in today's video. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody. This is Amateur Sports, the YouTube channel dedicated to Toronto Raptors content. So drop a like if you enjoy and subscribe for more content just like it. Today, we're talking about Darko Rajakovic and his contract with the Raptors, because Darko Rajakovic was made head coach of the Raptors 2 off seasons ago. This is almost the end of his second season as Raptors head coach. And in this basically 2 years' time, I have scoured the internet, I have scoured sources, I've asked around, I have heard nothing in regards to the length of contract that Darko Rajakovic had with the Raptors. I kind of assumed it was a 3-year contract, but I wasn't sure. Could it possibly be a 2-year contract? Could it possibly be a 4-year contract? Well, we finally have confirmation on the length of Darko's contract. And in fact, the contract was already extended a while ago. I know I put in the thumbnail here that the Raptors just made a huge decision with Darko Rajakovic, but that decision was made last offseason, because finally we have confirmation on the length of contract for the Raptors head coach. Michael Grange reported ahead of a recent Raptors game that the Raptors had given Darko Rajakovic the 4th-year option on his contract. It was a team option, so Darko Rajakovic's contract will be a 4-year contract. And that decision was made after his first season as Raptors head coach. So when he signed with the Raptors as coach, he signed on a 3-year deal. After 1 season where the Raptors won 25 games, Darko Rajakovic was then already given that 4th-year option from the team. So he will be with the team for, well, at least under contract with the team for the next 2 years after this one. So was this the right decision by the team at the time? Well, at the time, I'm not so sure. I definitely have my complaints about Darko Rajakovic. You've been watching the channel, you've been watching my videos, you've been watching my live streams. I have made it well aware I am not a fan of Darko Rajakovic, but in the second half of this season, he has definitely started to right the ship. He has definitely started to turn things around and shift my opinion on him. Now, overall, am I ecstatic to have him on for 2 more years as a head coach? I wouldn't go as far as to say ecstatic. I would say, okay, I can definitely understand why Darko Rajakovic is here to stay at this present point. But leading up to all of this in the last 2 years, even look at the first season for the coach. I was really disappointed with Rajakovic in his first season with the Raptors. They won 25 games, and you might think, okay, it was a tanking season, and yes, it was. In the end, it was a tanking season. But even amidst the troublesome second half of the season for the Raptors, always felt like that he still wasn't getting enough out of the players on court. You can't deny that as a player manager, like a guy who manages players, a guy who manages the egos, a guy who builds relationships with the players, you cannot deny he is fantastic in that endeavor. No question. At this point, we've seen a lot of evidence around his ability to develop players. So clearly, he's got the personal side of things. Clearly, he's got the development side of things. And part of that development stuff was showcased in the first year, but the winning was a big concern, because I get they were tanking second half of the season, but why were they in that position to tank in the first place? Because the first half of the season was so atrocious, and that was a team that had aspirations at the start of the year to definitely make the playoffs. It was a starting 5 of Dennis Schroeder, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Jakob Poeltl, plus Gary Trent Jr. coming off the bench. That's not a contender, but that was certainly a team we felt as though should have been in the mix for the playoffs, and it wasn't. It just flat out wasn't, and it felt like it was being very mismanaged by the coaching staff and Darko. So that's when I really started to sour on Darko as a head coach. Didn't really care for him for the rest of the season. Then leading into this season, it still was a disappointing start to the season. I think what compounded that disappointment was the fact that the Raptors just could not stop anything. The first half of the season, the Raptors defense was absolutely atrocious. And it's not just because of the personnel, the way they employed their defense. Man, the modern NBA, you want to, if you give up anything, you want to give up the inefficient shots in mid-range. But for the first half of the season, the Raptors defense was dominated by bigs. They would take away handlers out of the pick and roll very aggressively, and were just getting torched by opposition bigs to start the season, and the statistics absolutely back this up. But then there was a flip. Then there was a switch. They started to cater to taking that away. They started to allow some more of these inefficient shots. And over the course of the season, they have really developed their defense, and the defense has been fantastic for the Raptors in the second half of the season. Part of the reason it has been so good lately, and it has been good lately, I mean, the Raptors over the last 15 games, by the way, have the single best defensive rating amongst the entire National Basketball Association. On the season now, the Raptors are middle of the pack, 15th best defense in the league. Now, part of the reason it's been so good lately is because the schedule has been historically bad. They've had one of the easiest schedules I've ever seen over the last 15 games. But part of the reason it's the best in the NBA over that stretch is because the Raptors have just been better on defense. And they have been showing signs of improving that defense even ahead of this easy pocket of the schedule. So, maybe we give like a full season sample size to the Raptors playing this level of defense, even amidst playing harder teams. We could probably say they'd be top half. Maybe even close, maybe even just inside the top 10 defensively. So I give a lot of respect to the coaching staff for tinkering, and to Darko Rajakovic for tinkering with the defense and getting that fix correct. Feel like it maybe took a little bit too long to get to that point, but it's been so good lately. I give a lot of credit to that. I also have to give a lot of credit to development over the course of this season, because we've clearly seen developmental strides being taken by a lot of the younger players, and that's been a really big thing for the Raptors to do over the last 2 years. With a lack of resources overall in this rebuild phase, they have found a lot of talent with some younger players, and that talent is continuing to develop. And I have, even over the 2 years with Darko Rajakovic on the team, as much as I haven't been a fan, I have to give so much respect for the fact that he still has the players playing hard well into March and now into April. He still has the players behind him, and he still has morale seemingly very high amongst the team. That is very commendable as a head coach, to be able to achieve that with a team that has been tanking for back-to-back seasons. So it wasn't really a question to me that Darko Rajakovic was going to stay on after this season, but it does still feel a little bit confusing that they are ready to commit that extra season after only 1 year of seeing him as head coach. And again, it felt like a pretty underwhelming year. But obviously, the players really love him. Darko Rajakovic has his critics. He has people that are big fans of him. I think there's a wide spectrum of opinions on how people feel about Darko Rajakovic. Overall, as a head coach for me right now, I'm still on the side of I'm not a huge fan. I'm not sold on it, but there is a lot of promise being shown here, and I'm not too proud to admit if I'm wrong on something. I've never been on this channel. I've always owned up to something. If I feel as though evidence has changed and I was wrong about it, I'm not there yet with Darko, but there's a lot of promise being shown at this point. So as I said, what has been accomplished successfully in the Darko Rajakovic tenure, now nearly through 2 seasons? Players love him. Plain and simple. The players love playing for Darko Rajakovic, and they are bought into what Darko Rajakovic is conveying as a coach. Development clearly is quite good for Rajakovic. At the top of the team, lack of progression from Scotty Barnes has been a little bit frustrating, but we've seen tons of progression from RJ Barrett. Now that Quickly's healthy, we're starting to see a lot of progression from him. Pirtle has progressed immensely this season. It's continuing to go under the radar how good of a player he is. And like I said, the younger players as well building up, the way Shed has played this season, developed this season, the way Walter is slowly developing. There have been a lot of good developmental stories, but now things are changing. We're kind of in rebuild mode for a year and a half, 2 years here. Now it's changing. He has shown he can get the players behind him. He has shown that he can develop players and make guys better individually. But now it's time to win. And now there are no more excuses in regards to winning. He's going into his 3rd season here, and the Raptors, the starting 5 projected as of right now for next season is Quickly, Barrett, Barnes, Ingram, Pirtle, and you've got a pretty solid bench to work with as well. No more excuses on the winning front. That has got to be a playoff team for next season. And anything short of making the playoffs, obviously pending many variables such as injuries and other things that could go wrong. But looking at it right now, looking at it for next season and the possibility of strengthening the team in the offseason, especially with a pretty good draft pick incoming for the Raptors, that has got to be a playoff team. I'm not saying it's playoffs or bust for Rakovic as head coach, but in the next 2 years, there have got to be signs that he can get this team to win games. Because as much as there have been some good stuff in here, the one thing that has continued to plague the Rajakovic era is the ability to win. And I'm not talking about, right now amidst the tank playing against, again, this historically easy schedule the Raptors are on right now. Look, they're winning games and they're resting guys as well. And I give respect to that as well as a head coach who's still putting the team in a position to win and coaching the team very well in this stretch. I'm conceding that. I'm not hiding from that. Absolutely not. But if the Raptors are short of the playoffs, something has gone wrong, and potentially that could be the coach. I'm definitely not getting rid of Darko Rajakovic in the offseason. Like, maybe you could have convinced me, hey, other good coaches are available like Taylor Jenkins, but I think Darko Rajakovic has absolutely earned his opportunity to coach what should be a winning team next season, but he's got to start showing that he has the ability to coach a winning team, and the next 2 years he's got to prove in this Brandon Ingram era, essentially, where he's on a 2-year +1 contract. Darko has got to prove in this 2-year window that he has the capabilities of making this team a winning team and making this team super competitive for playoff positioning. And there has got to be very good signs of that happening next season. So, yeah, again, not sold on Darko, but wow, has a lot of progress been made in the second half of this season. Let's see what he can do when he actually has a team that needs to be in a winning position and does cater more to his style of coaching. You could argue the team I alluded to at the start of last season, it wasn't catered to him. He wasn't a fan of maybe using guys like Pascal Siakam or whatever. I mean, Siakam's going to be Siakam made his third All-Star team this year. It's probably going to make his third All-NBA team this year. But hey, we're moved on from that. We're past that. He's going to have an opportunity to coach a good team next year that caters to his style of coaching. Again, it's time to showcase that he can win some games as well as head coach. Before signing off, major shout outs to the amazing members in the community, but a special shout out to the member in the MVP tier, which is Sandy Thompson. Members get access to exclusive perks and exclusive content, which you can get signed up for today. But thank you to everyone for supporting Amateur Hour Sports.